from Buckingham Palace. His Majesty the King has today initiated a formal process to remove the style, titles and honours of Prince Andrew.
For years, Prince Andrew's controversies have haunted the royal family.
It's the scandal that's rocked the royal family to its core. Prince Andrew's relationship with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein.
But nothing prepared the world for this shocking conclusion. The once celebrated Duke has now faced the final reckoning. His sentencing marks the end of a royal chapter steeped in privilege, scandal, and denial. As the gavel fell, the grandeur of his title crumbled, leaving behind a legacy tainted by disgrace. What truly unfolded inside the courtroom, and how will the monarchy recover from a downfall this devastating? The end of an era has finally arrived. Prince Andrew says goodbye after losing the title of Lodge. The British royal family has been thrust back into the spotlight after Buckingham Palace confirmed that Prince Andrew will no longer bear the title of Prince and must vacate his longtime residence, Royal Lodge, in Windsor. This decision, which follows weeks of escalating scrutiny over his ties with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, marks one of the most dramatic royal rebukes in modern history. In an official statement released on Thursday night, the palace announced that the king's younger brother will now be formally known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. The statement, brief but firm in tone, stated that His Majesty the King has today initiated a formal process to remove the style, titles, and honors of Prince Andrew. This announcement follows a turbulent period for Andrew, who earlier this month relinquished his remaining royal designations, most notably the title Duke of York, after renewed public and media pressure surrounding his controversial associations and private affairs. The stripping of his prince style is seen as the final and most decisive measure yet, signaling that the royal household intends to create a clear line of separation between Andrew and the official workings of the monarchy. The palace also revealed that Andrew has been formally notified to surrender the lease on his lavish residence, Royal Lodge, a sprawling 30-room mansion on the Windsor estate that has been his home for decades. He is now expected to move into private accommodation on the Sandringham estate, a property understood to be funded personally by King Charles III, rather than through public or royal household finances. Behind the polished wording of the official statement lies a deep sense of consequence. For years, Andrew has faced mounting questions about his friendship with Epstein and the nature of his relationship with Epstein's victims. Though Andrew has repeatedly denied all allegations of wrongdoing,
I wish to reiterate and to reaffirm the statements which have already been made on my behalf by Buckingham Palace. My focus is on my word.
the public's faith in him has continued to erode, leaving the monarchy vulnerable to criticism and moral questioning. This step, while regrettable, has become unavoidable, a palace aide was quoted as saying. The integrity of the crown must be upheld, even when it requires difficult decisions involving family. Observers see this as part of King Charles's effort to safeguard the credibility of the monarchy by distancing the institution from scandal. The king's reign has been marked by a focus on transparency and restraint, and this move underscores his determination to protect the royal image, even at personal cost. Royal insiders describe the decision as the culmination of weeks of private discussions and intense emotional strain within the family. Sources suggest that Charles wrestled with the decision, torn between his role as a brother and as a monarch responsible for preserving the dignity of the crown. In the end, however, duty appears to have outweighed sentiment. Once celebrated for his charm, military service, and loyalty to the crown, Prince Andrew's story has turned into one of royal disgrace. Once a naval hero and public representative of the Queen, he is now a symbol of scandal and silence, living largely out of sight and stripped of his dignity. The decision to remove his prince title, a step even Queen Elizabeth II hesitated to take, marks a definitive break from his royal past. It is both punishment and declaration, accountability spares no one, not even the king's brother. In a rare statement, the palace voiced support for abuse victims, affirming their right to be heard. Andrew's retreat to Sandringham signals permanent exile from public life. For the monarchy, it is a reckoning and renewal, a stand for integrity over privilege. Behind closed gates, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor now lives not as a prince, but as a fallen man. Is Andrew the royal to lose his royal title? On what basis was his Sarah Ferguson affected? Let's delve into the details of what is left of the Yorks. The remains of the Yorks. For years, Prince Andrew's name had lingered in the air like a cloud over the British monarchy. Now, in a move that many saw as both inevitable and symbolic, the crown had drawn a firm line. His two grown daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, would remain untouched by the fallout, still recognized as princesses of the realm, still carrying the titles that linked them to royal history. Their father, however, had watched his world shrink to a shadow of what it once was. Once a beloved spare, he was now eighth in line to the throne, a position of inheritance that now felt purely ceremonial, almost ironic, given how far his public image had fallen. At the heart of this domestic rearrangement was also Sarah Ferguson, Andrew's former wife and longtime companion in an unconventional royal friendship. For decades, she had lived quietly at Royal Lodge, the grand, yet increasingly somber Windsor residence that once represented a shared past. The walls had witnessed their laughter, their brief rekindled closeness, and their stubborn loyalty to each other, even after divorce. But that chapter was closing too. Reports confirmed that Sarah would be moving out of Royal Lodge, stepping away from the estate she had called home for years. She was expected to make her own living arrangements, a decision that symbolized the monarchy's subtle but unmistakable distancing from the embattled Duke. Until recently, Sarah had continued to use the courtesy title Sarah, Duchess of York, a relic of her marriage that lent her an enduring association with the royal family. But following Andrew's quiet decision to surrender the Duke of York title, the link broke. Sarah was said to have reverted fully to her maiden name, Ferguson, a return to her independent identity after years of standing just outside royal circles. For her, it was both a loss and a liberation. No longer Duchess, but once again the woman she was before the fairy tale wedding, the scandals, and the decades of complicated love. Behind the palace walls, the atmosphere was one of measured calm and controlled crisis management. Every royal statement, every phrasing of protocol had to be weighed carefully. The decision to strip Prince Andrew of his prince title, an act of extraordinary constitutional weight, was not taken lightly. According to palace sources, the British government was formally consulted, ensuring that this unprecedented step carried not just royal approval, but political legitimacy. Westminster, it seemed, had given its quiet blessing. In a constitutional monarchy, symbolism is power, and the symbolism of this decision was unmistakable. The Crown was choosing moral accountability over hereditary privilege. The public reaction came fast and fierce. On BBC's Question Time, the topic dominated discussion. The Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, addressed the news with a tone that mixed empathy with determination. "It sends a very powerful message," she said firmly, "to the victims of grooming and sex offenses." Her words cut through the tension, simple, direct, and resonant. To many, this was not merely a royal matter, it was a social reckoning. A prince, once above reproach, had been publicly stripped of a sacred title. The message, no one, not even those born into crowns and castles, stood above the moral standards of the nation. For many Britons, the scandal surrounding Prince Andrew stirred a storm of mixed emotions. Some felt sympathy for his daughters and former wife. Others felt justice had finally caught up with privilege. There was grudging respect, too, for a monarchy forced to evolve under the weight of public morality. Yet beneath the ceremony and statements lay a quiet tragedy. A fallen prince, once a war hero and cherished son, now confined to isolation and memory. The laughter once heard in Royal Lodge had faded into silence. For Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie, the message was clear. In today's Britain, royal blood could no longer wash away the stain of misjudgment, nor shield one from the reckoning of consequence. While Andrew says goodbye, where are his relocation plans? How would he afford a new apartment, since he isn't a working royal? Let's dive into the details of Andrew's relocation. Prince Andrew's royal relocation. Prince Andrew is set to begin a new chapter of his life, one that takes him far from the public glare of Windsor to the quiet, windswept fields of Sandringham Estate, an 8,000-hectare stretch of royal land owned by his brother, King Charles III. The king, it has been reported, will personally cover the costs of Andrew's relocation.
Andrew moving up here to Sandringham. As you say, the people of Sandringham are, by and large,
a gesture of brotherly support, but also a way to keep the Duke's affairs discreetly managed. Sandringham lies in Norfolk, about a 2.5-hour drive north of London. It is not merely an estate, it is one of the most cherished royal properties, steeped in history and tradition. The centerpiece, Sandringham House, surrounded by 24 hectares of immaculate gardens, has long served as the royal family's country retreat. It is where generations of monarchs have spent Christmas, and where the famous photographs of the royals walking hand in hand down the long driveway toward St. Mary Magdalene Church are taken each year. This year, however, those Christmas photos may not include Prince Andrew. Reports earlier this month suggest that the Duke of York will not be invited to join the family for the festive celebrations. That omission, whether symbolic or practical, adds to the air of uncertainty surrounding his future role within the royal circle. For now, Buckingham Palace has not disclosed exactly where within Sandringham Andrew will live, leaving the media and the public to speculate. The estate is vast and varied, not just one grand palace but a living, breathing network of manor houses, cottages, farmland, and villages. Beyond the main house lie 240 hectares of royal parkland, more than 4,000 hectares of farmland, and residential properties spread across 13 surrounding villages. The estate even lists some of its smaller homes for rent on its official website, showing just how diverse its landscape is, from royal lodgings to countryside cottages for local tenants. British media outlets have been busy trying to pinpoint which of these properties will become Andrew's new residence. Hello. Magazines speculated that he might move into Wood Farm, a modest 5-bedroom home that held deep sentimental value for the royal family. It was at Wood Farm that Prince Philip, Andrew's late father, spent his quiet retirement years after stepping back from public duties in 2017. Yet BBC sources have since dismissed this possibility, claiming Andrew will not be living there. Another property under consideration, according to The Times, is York Cottage, an elegant red brick home once rumored to have been offered to Prince Harry and Meghan Markle after their wedding. While that never materialized, York Cottage still carries the right mix of privacy and prestige that might appeal to a royal in retreat. There's also mention of Garden House, described by Country Living as a charming countryside retreat for up to 8 guests. In 2022, it was even listed briefly on Airbnb, a curious detail that adds a touch of modern irony to a royal residence. Whether such a home could now become Andrew's permanent base remains to be seen. Finally, the Express proposed another intriguing option: Park House. This is no ordinary property. It was the birthplace of the late Princess Diana, and it currently stands unoccupied. If chosen, it would not only provide Andrew with the peace and seclusion he seeks, but would also add a poignant layer of royal history to his new beginning. Whatever the final decision, One thing is certain. Prince Andrew's move to Sandringham marks both a retreat and a reset. Once at the heart of royal life, he now prepares to live on its quiet edges, surrounded by fields, silence, and the weight of the past. While his address may soon change, the questions surrounding his future and his place within the House of Windsor remain very much alive. How has Andrew been enjoying the Royal Lodge before his eviction, despite not being a working royal? Was it inherited, leased, or bought? Let's dig into the details of the questions surrounding the royal mystery. Prince Andrew's Royal Lodge mystery. Prince Andrew's life behind palace gates has once again come under public scrutiny. This time, the attention isn't on titles or controversies of the past, but on something far more practical: how he continues to maintain a lavish lifestyle without being a working royal. Fresh questions are being asked about where his money comes from, how he manages his household, and what secret deals might be keeping the doors of his grand home open. For more than 2 decades, Prince Andrew has lived in Royal Lodge, an elegant and historic residence nestled deep within the Windsor estate. He moved into the property in 2004 after securing a 75-year lease the previous year from his landlord, the Crown Estate, a vast collection of properties officially owned by the monarch but run as an independent commercial organization. Royal Lodge isn't just a house, it's a statement of royal privilege. The Grade II listed mansion sits among sprawling gardens surrounded by age-old trees and manicured lawns. On the estate are several additional buildings: a gardener's cottage, the chapel lodge, a 6-bedroom guest cottage, and a dedicated security quarters for protection and staff. It is the kind of residence that whispers of old wealth, quiet luxury, and deep royal history. But in recent weeks, details have surfaced that make the arrangement far more intriguing. Reports suggest that Prince Andrew might not be paying anything close to a normal rent. In fact, documents reviewed by BBC News reveal that his lease might allow him to live there for decades while paying only a token annual rent, or possibly none at all. The revelation comes from a detailed lease agreement that shows Andrew's arrangement was structured differently from the typical royal housing deal. Instead of paying yearly rent, he agreed to make large lump sum payments up front, mostly directed toward extensive renovations and refurbishments. Those payments, totaling more than £8 million according to a National Audit Office report, were treated as an advance settlement for decades' worth of rent. In simple terms, Andrew effectively bought his freedom from future payments. The £8 million outlay covered what would have been the equivalent of £260,000 in annual rent for the full 75-year period. It was an expensive commitment at the time, but it allowed him to secure a luxurious royal residence for life without worrying about ongoing rent. Yet the timing and transparency of the deal continue to raise eyebrows. Critics argue that while the arrangement might be technically legitimate, it also shields him from the kind of financial scrutiny faced by other royals, especially since he no longer holds official royal duties. How can someone stripped of public roles still maintain a grand estate and full staff without visible sources of income? Adding to the tension are resurfaced reports linking the Royal Lodge to one of the darkest chapters in Andrew's public life: his association with Jeffrey Epstein. According to new information, Epstein was invited to Royal Lodge in 2006 as a guest during Princess Beatrice's 18th birthday celebration. This visit reportedly took place just 2 months after a U.S. arrest warrant had been issued for Epstein, following accusations of sexual assault involving a minor. The news has reignited public outrage, drawing yet another shadow over Andrew's already troubled reputation. When asked for clarification or comment, Prince Andrew declined to respond. Inside Buckingham Palace, Thursday's official statements were carefully worded, signaling a clear attempt to bring closure to what they describe as the Andrew chapter. The palace seems eager to distance itself from the controversies surrounding him. from financial mysteries to his ties with disgraced figures. For many, however, the questions remain. How much influence does he still hold? What role, if any, will he play in royal affairs moving forward? And perhaps most pointedly, is the Royal Lodge truly a private home, or a lingering symbol of privilege that refuses to fade? Whatever the case, the man once known as Prince Andrew, Duke of York, now bears a simpler, quieter identity: Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, a royal without rank, but not without mystery. Was Andrew truly innocent of the charges that led to his eviction? What scandals has he been known for in the past? Let's find out. How scandals consumed Andrew, the Duke of York. Prince Andrew's public life has been a continuous storm of controversy, a royal story stretching over 40 years, filled with scandal, denial, and disgrace. Once the Queen's charismatic second son and celebrated naval officer, his image has since crumbled into one of the monarchy's most damaging sagas. It began in 1984 during a trip to Los Angeles. Then a young prince known for his confidence and charm, Andrew shocked the press by spraying reporters with paint, laughing as cameras captured the moment. What he called a harmless joke was seen by many as arrogant and reckless, an early sign of a royal untethered from public decorum. The years rolled on, and with them came deeper shadows. In 2007, Andrew sold his mansion, Sandringham Park, for £15 million, a full 20% above the asking price, to a Kazakh businessman tied to political elites. The transaction sparked murmurs of favoritism and backdoor dealings. Why would anyone pay so much above value? Was royal proximity part of the price? The palace denied wrongdoing, but the public's trust began to waver. By 2010, the scandals were no longer about property, but personal ethics. Andrew's ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson, was caught on camera in a sting operation, apparently offering to sell access to her former husband for £500,000.
£500,000 when you can, to me, open doors.
The footage was humiliating, not just for her, but for Andrew, who once again found himself at the center of unwanted attention. Then came 2011, and with it, the scandal that would define him. His long-standing friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, the American financier later convicted of sex trafficking minors, became front-page news. Photographs of Andrew walking with Epstein in Central Park, taken after Epstein's first conviction, shocked the British public. His connections to other controversial figures, including Saif Gaddafi, son of Libya's late dictator, only worsened matters. The government could no longer defend him. By March that year, he was forced to resign as the UK's Special Trade Envoy, a position he had once used to champion British business abroad. When Epstein was arrested again in 2019 and subsequently died in prison, the scandal reignited. Allegations resurfaced that Andrew had slept with an underage girl, Virginia Giuffre, who claimed she was trafficked by Epstein. The prince denied everything, insisting he had no recollection of ever meeting her, though a photograph of them together said otherwise. His disastrous BBC Newsnight interview that year only deepened the crisis. He came across as unfeeling, defensive, even oblivious to the gravity of the allegations. Within days, public sympathy evaporated. By 2020, the palace announced that Andrew would step back indefinitely from royal duties. Over 230 of his royal patronages cut ties with him. Charities distanced themselves. His military titles were frozen. The once proud Duke of York was now a man without a role, hidden from view. In 2022, desperate to end the legal saga, Andrew settled Giuffre's U.S. civil lawsuit for an estimated $10 million, though he did not admit guilt. The agreement silenced court proceedings, but not public outrage. Just when the dust seemed to settle, another storm brewed. In 2024, British intelligence sources linked Andrew to a suspected Chinese spy, rekindling whispers of compromised judgment and poor associations. Then came April 2025, the darkest turn yet. Virginia Giuffre died by suicide, an event that reopened old wounds and reignited debate about Andrew's accountability. Later that same year, leaked emails from 2011 surfaced, showing that Andrew had remained in contact with Epstein far longer than he had publicly admitted. His earlier denials unraveled, and the monarchy could no longer shield him. By October 2025, after months of private deliberations and public fury, King Charles acted decisively. Andrew was stripped of all remaining royal privileges, formally relinquishing the Duke of York title that had defined him. His military honors were revoked, his official residence at Windsor reclaimed. Today he lives as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. No longer a working royal, no longer a duke, just a man carrying the weight of his past. Once born into a life of privilege and public duty, he now walks in the long shadow of his own choices. A prince, in name only, whose story stands as one of the monarchy's most tragic downfalls. Which case in particular has sent the royal parking from the royal household? What was he accused of committing? Why did he deny the allegations? Let's delve into the details. The case that haunted the crown. When the world first heard her name, Virginia Giuffre became a face of courage in the storm surrounding Jeffrey Epstein's dark empire. Once a teenage victim lured into Epstein's orbit, she had grown into a woman determined to speak her truth, even when her words pointed straight toward the palace. In 2021, she took the bold step of suing Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, alleging that she had been forced into sexual encounters with him when she was just a girl, trafficked by Epstein and his inner circle. The news landed like a thunderclap across Britain. It was a story that mixed royalty, power, and exploitation, a blend both shocking and tragic. Andrew vehemently denied the accusations, insisting he had never met her in any inappropriate way. Yet the evidence, the pictures, and the testimonies painted a murky picture. The legal battle that followed drew the eyes of the world. Reporters camped outside courtrooms, royal watchers speculated, and public opinion began to shift. The monarchy, already bruised by scandals and shifting loyalties, found itself once again under the microscope. By 2022, the case was settled out of court, with Andrew agreeing to pay a substantial, undisclosed sum to Giuffre. His lawyers were quick to emphasize that the settlement included no admission of guilt or wrongdoing. But for the public, the gesture spoke louder than the fine print. Silence was read as concession. And for the royal family, the damage had already been done. Months turned to years, but the shadow of that case never quite faded. Then, early this year, tragedy struck again. Virginia Giuffre died by suicide. Her passing reopened old wounds and reignited debate over power, privilege, and accountability. In a heartfelt statement, her family described Andrew's recent decision to step away from his royal titles as vindication for our sister and for survivors everywhere. They didn't stop there. The family went further, calling on King Charles III himself to strip Andrew of the title Prince. For them, it was a symbolic act long overdue, not merely for their lost sister, but for every victim who had been silenced, dismissed, or shamed for daring to confront the powerful. Inside Buckingham Palace, official statements were restrained and careful, almost painfully so. Acknowledging Andrew's ongoing denials, the palace reiterated the family's respect for due process, an elegant phrase that said everything and nothing at once. Behind the gilded walls, the situation was said to be tense. The monarchy, already adapting to a new reign and public scrutiny, could ill afford another fracture. And then came the infamous BBC Newsnight interview, which would go down as one of the most disastrous royal media appearances in modern memory. Sitting across from journalist Emily Maitlis, Prince Andrew tried to defend himself. His tone was calm, his manner confident, but his words would haunt him. When asked about the night Giuffre claimed he assaulted her, he said he had an alibi. He insisted that he had been at a Pizza Express restaurant in Woking with his daughter, Princess Beatrice, that evening. An oddly specific detail that soon became a cultural reference point for disbelief and satire. Viewers watched in stunned silence as a prince tried to clear his name with a memory of pizza and dough balls. The interview did not save him. Instead, it buried his reputation. Public trust in Andrew crumbled almost overnight. His royal duties were suspended, military honors withdrawn, and he faded from the spotlight. A once celebrated prince, now living in the long shadow of scandal. Virginia Giuffre's story did not end in her lifetime, but her voice echoes still, through her family, through survivors, and through the uncomfortable questions her courage forced the world to confront. What happens when power shields the guilty? And when will justice, even for the most powerful, truly mean the same for all? So, do you think Andrew's eviction is best for the monarchy? What lessons does it leave for the monarchy? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.